like to welcome back to the show returning champion, Karl Iglesias. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, thanks. Pleasure to be here.
So you have a distinct honor of being one of my very first guests ever on the Indie Film Hustle podcast. You were episode number 8.
Wow.
And you were kind enough to give a fledgling podcaster an opportunity to interview you, sir, all those years ago. And that interview is done. I mean, I think that's interviews downloaded tens of thousands of times over the course of the last 4 years. It's been one of the most popular ones. And we've always like, oh, we got to get you back on the show. We got to get you back on the show. So finally we like, let's do this.
I'm sought after. So yeah, I'm glad I finally found the time.
No, but I appreciate it. It was such a wonderful interview talking about the craft. And and like I said before, you were one of the first people I reached out to because your book, Creating Emotional Impact, was one of those really pivotal books that I read. It was a producer that I was working with on a movie, and they said, you should read this book after they read my screenplay. They're like, you should read his book. It's probably going to help you. And I was blown away by not only the emotional impact, but I remember just those little segments. There was a segment in that book that's like, if you have this word in your screenplay too many times, just go in and do a find and replace this word or replace this word. Like those like lazy words that you use for writing. It's like when people read this, it's like those little things I had just blew my mind when I was writing the first time.
Yeah, because the whole thing was from the reader's, my whole concentration is the reader's emotional experience. So you got to remember that when you're writing a script, your very first audience and only audience will be a reader reading that script, right? And if they pass on it, that's it, you're done. So you're really writing for one reader.
And if you can make him
sure everything, the reading experience, the description, let alone, of course, the craft of storytelling, right? But just the actual experience of reading a script is so important.
One thing I wanted, before I even get into the questions, I want the audience to understand in regards to writing a screenplay, because I've written screenplays, I've written books. I much rather write books. There's so much more freedom.
It's easier, isn't it?
Oh my God.
Screenwriting seems so easy.
Because it's like less words, right? It's less words. It's less pages. It's like, oh, it's easy. My first book was
a movie, and we go to movies all the time.
My first book was like, I think almost 60,000 words. And my second book's almost 60,000 words. Right. And I wrote them like water. It was just like, oh, this is easy. And the first book was a narrative story. So it was kind of like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. There's no economy at all. Where in a screenplay, you have to be so economical. And I want you just to explain to the audience that when you're reading a page, you need to look out into a sea of white. That is the goal, is a sea of white
space. Yeah.
As much
less
white
is more is the advice.
Yes, as much white space as you can get. Right. And, descriptions, how long should descriptions be, all this kind of stuff. So please just explain the whole sea of white.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's obviously, there's also an art to it. There's a lot of producers and development executives that I talk to, they look for voice, right? It's the voice of the writer. And it's the same with fiction, but with screenwriting, it's even better. So there's a sense of wittiness, of rhythm, of visuals, imagery, vividness. But the key is, the best analogy I found with screenwriting is that it's visual poetry, right? So you know how poetry is very, very
a haiku, like a haiku.
Exactly, a haiku is even more intense and short, right? But if you think of poetry as opposed to prose, one of the mistakes that I see a lot with beginning writers, screenwriters, is that they write as if they're writing prose. So it's like it's a very novelistic voice in the script. They describe too much, when you should think about how to describe the same thing with the least amount of words. So it's really more about poetry and visual poetry than prose.
Yeah, like I've read screenplays where like the man walked into the bar. The bar was, you could smell in the air the stale cigarettes. As he walked, the floor stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Like, that's wonderful.
And he was thinking about what he had for breakfast.
And he was thinking, and by the way, here's what he had for breakfast. He had bacon, eggs. But the eggs were runny, not too runny. Like, and this
the page count is like 200 pages.
Right, and that's how it's written. And you're like, look, don't get me wrong. When I wrote my first screenplay, I was not far off from that. It was like, it's something that you have to learn. It is, because when you write in school, when you write, even if you're writing, creative writing, they don't teach you the economy of of words, and to make that impact so much, and using dashes, and there's like little tricks and techniques to kind of just move things along. And but when you read out, and you'll know, by the way, in page 1, you'll know page 1, right? Yeah. Page 1, you'll go, no. Yeah.
Most executives can tell by page 1 if it's going to be a good reading experience or not, even most readers. And I still remember an anecdote by Jerry Bruckheimer, the famous Pirates of the Caribbean producer, who's known to pick any script at random and open anywhere, and he reads one page. And if he's not wowed by that one page, he throws it off.
Wow.
So just the challenge, And I do talk about, in my book, when I talk about describing and writing, it's not just page 1 that counts. It's not the first 10 pages that counts. It's not the first act that counts. It's every single page. And the challenge you should have as a screenwriter is that you should be able to pick any script, open it anywhere, and you should be completely engrossed and engaged by that one page. And if it makes you turn the second page and so on, that's the key. That's the secret.
The thing that I feel that screenwriters have been dealing with for years, and now even more so than ever, is what filmmakers are starting to deal with now in today's marketplace. So before, and also in screenwriting, in the early days, there wasn't a lot of competition. There weren't a lot of people screenwriting. That concept of you could be a screenwriter didn't come in until arguably the 70s and the 80s is when it really started to come up, right?
Actually, I may correct you on that.
Please tell me.
That goes all the way up to the 1910s.
What do you mean?
1913, like there's actually the very first.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Thing, how to write a photoplay. They used to be called
the photoplay. Yes.
There used to be an how-to industry for screenwriters all the way back to 1910.
But how much competition? Like how many people were really?
If there was books already printed,
I guess
everybody wanted to write screenplays, right? Then, so it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And there was some competition without question.
But you're right. In the 70s, I think Sid Field is the one that kind of turned it.
It blew up. It blew up, and then
mainstream,
Linda came out afterwards, and they really were the catalyst of like now everybody, and the technology was much more affordable, and it was a big thing. So there was a lot less competition back in the days. Now there's it's just ridiculous amount of competition for screenwriters. Filmmakers before too had less competition in the marketplace. You could, if you just made a movie in the 80s, it was sold. Good, bad. Toxic Avenger was sold internationally. There was less competition. So I think the reason I'm bringing that up is because when you're a screenwriter now, you've got to use every trick in the book to cut through all the competition and formatting and having that creative white space. I'm assuming you are a genius storyteller. This is beyond the storytelling. That's an assumption.
Well, I'll correct you on that one as well.
Actually. Sure, go for it. Tell me, please.
As much as there's an importance in the formatting and the description, right? And
sure.
Like a professional, the number one thing above and beyond anything is the craft of storytelling.
Well, obviously,
If you don't know the craft of storytelling, which I find a lot of people don't, they think they do, but they don't. They could have the most perfectly formatted script and the best written description-wise. But you're still not going to have a good experience after reading that script, right?
Right.
So it's like there's that joke about, that William Goldman, when he was writing screenplays, he could write, or Joe Esterhaz, he could write a script in a napkin and it would sell for $3 million, right? Because it's not about the napkin, it's about the craft of storytelling. So at least for me, I mean, obviously I'm biased because I'm all about the craft of storytelling.
Right,
so
which is
an important thing.
Which, without question, I do not disagree with you in the least. But with that said, when you're Joe Esterhaus, when you're Shane Black, when you're Tarantino, when you're Aaron Sorkin, you really don't have to deal with any of the rules that we're talking about. Because people are going to read it because of who you are. But that first script, that very first one, you can't have misspellings. You can't have grammatical issues. You can't
you look good.
You have to be tight.
First impressions count.
You've got to be tight.
I remember when I used to be a reader. That was my first entry level in the industry. Right. I used to be a script reader for Edward James Olmos. And, we have all these tricks. We look at the last page. We go, oh, my God, it's 200 pages. We know the guy's an amateur. We look at formatting. So there's all these little things that you can do right away to kind of like already get the flags out of the way, right? So you see all these red flags. You go, okay, that's an amateur. And then you read the script. So you don't want that. So you're right. And those are very fixable. You want to, checking for typos, make sure it's formatted correctly. And all the stuff, make sure it looks professional. That's obviously the first step. Yeah.
It's tightening up the craft of just the presentation
Exactly. Yeah.
with the storytelling involved, and that's what you need to cut through all of this competition. Because look at Bruckheimer. You're like, he'll just grab. I mean, how many scripts does Jerry Bruckheimer have in his office? I'm sure literally piled.
All right. Yeah.
Piled up. So if you're lucky enough to, like, if the gods are with you on the day that he picks up yours and goes, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Fighter pilots? No, that's not going to work. So it's so important. So I haven't even asked you the first question yet. So the first question is, this is going to settle in, guys. We're going to be here for a minute. So explain to the audience, what is the concept of emotional impact within screenwriting? It's something that is basically your bread and butter and your angle on the craft, which is one of my reasons I love to have different points of view on the same problem, which is the craft of screenwriting.
Right. Well, that's a really good question. And it's funny because I don't know if I look at it from a point of view of an angle or a niche, even though that seems to be my niche, because I feel that it's everything. It's everything. It is the core of storytelling, right?
You mean to create emotion? No. You mean to create emotions in your story?
We're talking about the emotions of the characters, right? No. Right? We're talking about the emotions of the audience. We're talking about the emotions of the reader reading your script, right? Mm-hmm. So whether an actor reads your script, they got to be emotionally moved by it. If a director reads your script, they have to be impacted by it. A producer needs to be impacted by it. The film needs to impact an audience. It's everything. And not only in screenwriting, but in music, in fashion, in everything. It's like life, right? Everything is an emotional impact on the reader. And it's what makes you like something or not like something, right? You go to a movie, you say, I like this movie, or it's my favorite movie of all time. The reason it is because it emotionally impacted you more than the movie you forgot about that you saw on Netflix or whatever, right? So for some reason, I feel like I'm kind of surprised that, everybody kind of talks about it, but not really, right? They tend to focus more on structure and plot and characters and all that stuff. So this actually brings up an interesting point about when beginners learn the craft and they write a script, they usually go in this order. There's three things, right? They start with plot. They try to figure out how to develop their plot. Then they think of their characters, right? They put the characters in their plot. And maybe they're thinking about theme, which is what the whole story is about, right? What they're trying to say with their story. And so plot, character, theme is like the process that most writers, as they start, go through. When you're an intermediary writer, right? When you know a little more, you have a little more tools and craft under your belt, you start with character, right? So you think of character, then they think about the plot, because the characters, what they do and what they want, create the plot. That's smart. And maybe then they think of theme. Theme is always the last thing. It's also the least thought subject, but the most important. Mm-hmm. And people don't think about this. So theme is something that I've really kind of like dug deep the last 5 or 6 years, because it's the most important thing in terms of it's what starts it all, in a sense. It's what do you want to say with your story. Now, I remember one of my favorite writers, Rod Serling, who did Twilight Zone. He's like a
of course,
genius screenwriter, and he said overall theme. So his process was theme number one leads to character, which leads to plot. So the process, and that's the process of most professional writers, right, who write great stories, is theme, character, plot, in that order. Not plot, character, and maybe theme, right? So for me, when I read scripts, when I consult or teach, and you may have a good plot, you may have some good characters, but a lot of the times we have a breakdown in theme. In other words, some maybe realize that they're trying to say something with their script, but it's not what I call successfully argued through the script. There's no thematic argument through the script. And so it doesn't work. The song doesn't work. Even though you may have great characters, great dialogue, maybe a good plot, some twist surprises. Okay, that may work, but there's something missing. And to me, theme is what takes a script from good to great. So it's like, to me, it's the most important thing. It starts with theme, which gives you characters, which gives you plot. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself there in terms of
So
Yeah.
then, can you give us an example of a movie that really started with theme, character, and plot? Do you have any ideas?
Well, I don't know. Now, most great movies, I don't know how they started.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah, it's
Right on
no
the
way.
mind.
Yeah,
Although,
yeah, yeah.
although I can probably talk about Little Miss Sunshine because there is a clip of Michael Arndt, the writer, who's at a bookstore and he answered an audience question, and he talked about how he came up with the idea for Little Miss Sunshine. And for him, it started with theme. And the way he started with theme is because he had heard a quote. He had heard Arnold Schwarzenegger talk about whatever at an interview, and Arnold Schwarzenegger said, "The thing that I despise most is losers. I don't like losers, right? So life is about winners and losers." And he thought that was such a
Arrogant,
a despicable thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Human beings, that he had this idea for Little Miss Sunshine. Now, Little Miss Sunshine, so he started with theme because every single thing in Little Miss Sunshine is on point with theme. In other words, this is one of the best, and that's the reason why such a simple movie is so loved, because it was so thematically rich. It was on point. Everything fits together. The characters, what the characters want, their emotions, their arcs, the dialogue, the plot, everything is in service of that theme, right? Which is, what's the best way to live? Like, is winning a sign of success, or is it just, being a human being and loving your family and just enjoying it, right? So the grandfather in that movie who says, it's not about winning, it's about trying and enjoying what you're doing, right?
Yes.
And when you think about it, every scene in the movie fits that, right?
Especially the last one.
Yeah, exactly, right? And even simple scenes like the diner scene where they're asking ice cream. It's such a simple scene, but it's like everything about the theme of winnings and losing. And it's everything what the father says, which is all about being a winner, and everybody around him is rolling their eyes, oh, come on, and trying, so when you think about it, a story is really an argument between two sides, right? And you're trying to tell the audience which side is the best way to live. That's what theme does. It's kind of like a how-to manual for life when you think about it.
Right, exactly. There was last year's Best Picture winner, Green Book.
Yeah.
I remember watching, I had a screener for it, and my wife and I were watching, and we started it late. We started it late in the evening. We're like, oh, we'll watch a little while of it, and then we'll go. And we wouldn't turn it off until it hit like midnight, and we were like, we got to keep watching this.
Right. So that's emotional impact for you. It moved you, it engaged you, you wanted to see the end of it, no matter how long it was.
Exactly.
Right. If it's scripted that, you're good.
Right. And the thing that I found so amazing about that movie, which it's not a movie that I'm going to watch 1,000 times. It's just not one of those films. Like Star Wars is one of those films, or for me, Shawshank Redemption.
Star Wars is great thematically. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And Shawshank Redemption, which is everybody in the show knows my love for that film. But there's films that I'll watch 1,000 times, but that movie, the theme of it, and it was just two guys in a car, essentially. The entire movie was two guys in a car. For the most part of it, it was just like the banter between these amazing actors. The dialogue was remarkable.
Right.
And you're just sitting there.
If I said, what was the movie about for you? Like if you say, what was the movie about?
It's about friendship. It's about friendship.
There you go.
It's about friendship. It's about the battle of societal norms.
Friendship overcoming racism.
Yeah, friendship overcoming societal.
That's the journey that the driver takes, right?
Right, societal norms, and then on both sides, because he was an elitist. I forgot his name. He won the best actor. I forgot. There's Viggo Mortensen and the other guy. The other guy was an elitist because he was a very well educated man, and Viggo was a street thug
and alone and disconnected
completely. While this guy was ignorant, a street thug, but had a heart of gold.
Exactly.
And he had a moral compass.
Yeah.
And as rough it was just, but it was so simple. It was so like a good meal, a well executed meal,
right?
That's not
complex. That's another of my kind of maxims that I always tell students and clients, which is like, always aim for a simple story with complex characters, not the other way around, right? A lot of people think of complex stories with twist and surprise and all that stuff, and then they come up with simple characters, which is not good, right? So think simple stories, complex characters.
Without question, man. Now, what are some key elements that you need for a very impactful scene? Which are the scenes are the building blocks of our story in this platform.
Well, that's a big topic. So scenes is something that I find that a lot of writers don't know how to do, even though they think they do, right? So they think of, they think of a scene with two people talking, and what they mostly do is basically, it's just exposition, right? They're talking about what the audience needs to know to advance the story. And so you have two people, basically, most of their dialogue is exposition. So the first thing that I tell people about scene writing is look at it as a mini story. Right? So if you think of a story, you think about 3 acts, right? You think of a beginning, middle, and end. You think of a character who wants something, right? You think of conflict, what's standing in their way, and what do they do about it, right? That's your whole script. Well, think about the same thing in a scene. In a good scene, you have a character who wants something, is having difficulty getting it, right? And you watch how they go about getting it. And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't, and then you move on to the next scene. Right? So that's why I call dramatic scenes. So dramatic, not in the sense of, melodramatic, like, hysteric people yelling at each other. I'm talking about dramatic in the true sense of the meaning of drama, which is a character not getting what they want. That is the essence of drama.
And then that's also
a character wants something and not getting it.
Right, and if you're able to construct scenes like that, you keep the audience engaged the entire
Absolutely,
time.
Because that creates tension. They wonder if they're going to get it or not, right? And especially if you have stakes, which is another part of the equation, right? High stakes, low stakes. It's got to be important for the character to get in the scene. So if we don't care, we're not going to care, right? So you got to have high stakes in the scene, right? A strong reason for a character wanting something and a desperation for them to get it. And then you have tension. And to me, tension is this kind of interplay between, us worrying that they're not going to get it or something bad's going to happen, and hope that things are going to work out for that character.
So a scene like in a Hitchcock movie, the bomb underneath the desk, the bomb underneath the coffee table. Right. That whole concept of, because that scene to me, and there's a lot of Hitchcock, arguably there were characters, and some of his best movies were character driven, like Psycho, North by Northwest. Some of his other ones were much more structural in plot.
Well, he was the master of suspense. All he cared about was suspense. That's all he cared about. He cared about great tension. He really cared about manipulating the audience's emotions. Right. And he even said that. There's actually a great anecdote that was shared by Ernest Lehman, who wrote North by Northwest. And he said that, you remember when he used to be on set in between takes, and Hitchcock said, it's amazing how the movies, we do this and the audience feels this, and then we do this and the audience feels that. It's almost like we're playing an organ at a church, and each key is a specific emotion. And then Hitchcock said, yeah, pretty soon we won't need that. We won't need movies anymore. We'll just kind of like put him to electrodes or something like that, and play all the different keys. But he was a master at that. And that example about the bomb on the table was really to explain the difference between surprise and dramatic irony. So dramatic irony is also known as reader superior position or audience superior position, which is putting the audience in a superior position than the characters.
That they know something that nobody else.
They know that they know something the characters don't know. So his take, which he was right about, is that you could have two characters talking in a scene at a restaurant talking about the weather, right? And suddenly a bomb goes off, because there was a bomb on the table. We didn't know this, right? So you have 5 seconds of shock and surprise, okay? Another way of doing that scene is to actually have the two people talking in the scene and then put the camera down so you see the bomb ticking, and it's got 15 minutes to go, and then you go back again to the people talking about the weather. Now you have 15 minutes of tension and suspense. So he said, yeah, 15 minutes of suspense is a lot better than 5 seconds of surprise and shock. Yeah. Right. All right. So audience superior position is probably one of the most often used techniques, very effective for creating that engagement and creating that suspense and that tension.
And then the concepts that you were just talking about before, where a character in a scene needs to get something and something stopping them, that conversation at that table could be all of that, but then you add into the mix, there's a bomb underneath the table.
Right.
But the Hitchcock said one very important thing that you left out, that you cannot, once the audience knows the bomb is there, you cannot blow the table up. You can't blow the place up because they will be very upset with you. If you kill them and they didn't know about it, okay. But if you let them in on it and you torture them for 15 minutes and you still kill them, they'll never forgive you.
I know exactly. Right. Yeah.
So, now you also have gone deep into Pixar and the magic of what Pixar has been able to do.
Because they're the master storytellers.
I mean, they are.
It is my favorite stories of all time are Pixar. I'm a big fan of Pixar. I study their techniques, and they all fit with what I'm talking about.
So it's so fascinating, their process with the creative, like, kind of round table, or the mind what is it?
The brain trust. Yes.
Brain trust, yeah. So the brain trust, where they have, like, 7 amazing storytellers that, like, literally rip apart stories and they put it together. And Pixar, they haven't hit it out of the park every time. They have a hell of a good batting average, but they haven't. There's Cars 2. But but there's also Up, and there's so many amazing stories, and they let's say there's like an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 for Pixar without question.
They still know how to tell a good story.
They still don't know how to tell a good story. What do they do? What is it about them that makes them able to pull those emotions? Because, like, I just watched Toy Story 4. And I'm with my daughter, and I was just like, I'm like, what? Why? Like, I don't understand. Like, I mean, Pixar, I'm a grown ass man, and I'm like crying at a cartoon.
They do make you cry. That's for sure.
I mean, Toy Story 3, Toy Story 2, that song in Toy Story 2.
Wall-E
Wall-E, don't even get me started.
Emo. Oh yeah, no.
No, you listen to that sad song that what's her name, the cowgirl song is singing.
That was in Toy Story 2.
Yeah. The sad song about the toy, and she goes
abandoned. Yeah,
it's a 3-minute song, and you're just like,
yeah.
or the first 5 minutes of Up. Right. The most amazing way to tell a story of an entire life's love. You're just like,
yeah, exactly.
How did they do it?
So they're very good at that. But again, you gotta understand too. It's not just about that, right? I mean, they don't take you to the movie and then show you just a sad scene and you cry and you go home. That's not it, right?
No.
It's a whole complete experience. So that's the good thing about Pixar, is that because they write for everybody. They write for kids. They write for adults, right? They got the 4 demographics, right? The 4Q, we call it, right? Young, old, men, women. But they tell what I call a complete story, right? A complete story has got characters we care about, a good story, right? A thematic argument, right? So all of them are about something important, character transformation. There's got some funny scenes. It's got some sad scenes. It's got some tense scenes, right? It runs the gamut of emotions. So, I talk about emotional impact, but a lot of people think, well, I'm talking about the character emotions. It's not a character emotion. It's about the audience emotions. So when you think about the emotions you like to go and pay money for, you go to the theater or watch TV or watch Netflix to feel these emotions. So the emotions that you want to feel is laughter, right? If you want to watch a comedy, you want to feel romance, you want to feel love, you want to feel connection between human beings. You want to feel anticipation, you want to feel hope, you want to feel curiosity, you want to feel surprise, you want to feel tension. We like tension because it engages us, right? It keeps our brain locked in, right? So all these emotions is what I'm talking about in the book and in my classes about how do you do that? How do you create curiosity? How do you create anticipation? How do you create suspense, right? There's actually techniques, which is what the craft is about, right? So you can teach the techniques. I can't teach people what to write. I can't tell you what ideas to write or what story to write or what characters to write. But I can tell you when something does not work. If I read a script and I'm not engaged by it, I'm bored with it, I don't care, I'm going to tell you why I don't care. And I'm going to show you how to fix that, because that's what I focus on. That's my specialty in terms of like the actual emotions of the reader and of the audience.
They have, I mean, obviously they have an amazing batting average, and the stories that they continues to tell again and again. You just sit there going,
they're great. Yeah.
How do you do it? And it is one good thing about them. If anyone listening is writing stories for kids, you've got to throw those inside jokes for the adults, because that's what's going to make it better. It goes away from that. Yeah. There's a difference between Saturday morning. I know I'm dating myself, but Saturday morning cartoons, which are dedicated directly to kids, and then a Pixar movie, which an adult would watch again and again and again and again.
All right.
Like
But
Up.
then look at cartoons. Like my favorite cartoons, Looney Tunes cartoons, was the Roadrunner cartoons, right? With Wall-E
Yeah.
Coyote, my favorite character.
Oh.
And those, I mean, adults enjoyed those as
Well,
well.
but those
it was
are
all about, you know,
but there's some
conflict.
Okay, so yeah, let's break this down. You brought this up. Let's break down the Roadrunner and Wall-E Coyote and why they endure to this day. And they also, there's no language, so every language in the world can get it. Yeah. Every culture in the world pretty much
got everything in it.
So
about it.
And we're talking about simplicity. So let's break it down.
Okay, well, you got a character, right?
Who wants something
and who wants something desperately.
Yes,
right?
He does.
And what does he do about it? He's the most creative person in the world because he comes up with all these different ways. And we appreciate that. We go, oh, that's very clever, right? And then we hope, because he's been doing it, because believe it or not, we care about Wall-E Coyote, right? We also care about the bird, but the bird just keeps running away, right? The bird is actually smarter.
There's no emotion. There's no.
With the bird as well.
I would argue
we root for Coyote.
There's no emotional connection to the Roadrunner. There's emotional connection to the plight of the coyote.
Exactly. Right, because we understand, right? And the thing with Wall-E Coyote is that it's the epitome of perseverance. The epitome of perseverance, and we all. That's the thematic argument, right? In all those cartoons, they talk about perseverance, how to persevere, how to keep going, how to come up with new ideas, even if you fail. It's not about failing. Right. It's about failing and getting up and try again a different way. And that is a life lesson, if I didn't hear one, you know? That's what we love so much. Plus, it's funny, you know? And we want to see how the coyote just keeps failing all the time.
And I've only seen a couple. If I remember, he only caught the Roadrunner like 2 or 3, 4 times, I think, in the entire run.
Oh my God, this reminds me. There's actually a clip online. You could Google it. I think it was. I don't know if it was Seth MacFarlane or something. So like the Family Guy guy.
Yeah.
And he did a small cartoon of what happened the day that Wall-E Coyote actually killed the Roadrunner and his life afterwards. It was so funny. It's only 4 minutes long. And it's hilarious because it's like you get this guy, the coyote is like so depressed because he has nothing to look forward to, and he's drinking, and he's like he has no goals, you know.
and I know we're laughing, but that is actually what happens in our business all the time. You see these people who win Oscars or have a $200 million big huge movie, and once they get to that success,
they get to the top. There's nothing else after that. Yeah.
Like they crash, and their entire world comes crashing down around them. People who win the lottery, you see that happen all the time.
Exactly.
But I am going to look up the Wall-E Coyote.
And by the way, this is one thing you have to understand about stories is that there's a reason why we love stories. There's a reason why stories are shaped the way they are in terms of characters with goals and transformation, because we evolved with stories, and stories kind of teach us how to live, right? So this is like we're talking about the Roadrunner. That's a lesson in perseverance and not giving up, right? That's something that they teach us in life as well. So it matches. And so when I talk to writers about storytelling and theme specifically, because theme addresses that, is you've got to make sure that what your story addresses is life, you know, like all the problems with life. So in terms of like perseverance or love, right? I mean, there's a reason why love stories are the most popular in romances. Relationship stories.
Yeah, no, of course. And it was those stories that kept us alive, because you would tell the story about the tiger at the end of the river that killed the boy, and all of a sudden that story would go like there was a tiger that killed by the river, and that story kept going and kept the tribe safe.
Exactly.
And those stories around the
stories are our survival mechanism. It's what made us evolve and survive up to now. And
right.
will for a long time. Yeah. There's never been a culture without stories. Like every culture in the entire civilization from the very beginning has had stories. From the moment we're able to communicate with each other, we've had stories.
And I think it's also just another way for us to share our life experience so we can feel that we're going through it with somebody else.
Exactly.
It's cathartic.
I bring up another very interesting point. Have you heard of mirror neurons?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, so the reason we so connect to movies and to is all about this concept of mirror neurons, which is we have neurons in our brain that when we watch something, the brain thinks that we are doing it, And so when we see a character doing something on screen, your brain is thinking the same thing that you're doing it on screen. And so there's that connection, right? So you see things that look like life, and you see characters doing things and transforming, right? That in a subtle way teaches you how to do it in a subtle way. Yeah.
Is that why the Joker has gotten such a visceral reaction from the public? Because there's a lot of people who walk out. I was in the theater when I was watching, and there was people walking out.
I haven't seen it yet, so
I won't ruin it for you, but it is. But you understand the concept.
I heard
it's the
really
Joker.
good, right?
I loved it. I thought it was a masterpiece. I think Joaquin Phoenix will win the Oscar. I mean, if he doesn't, it's an absolute travesty if he doesn't win the Oscar. Yeah. But I was fascinated. I walked in with, to get me to go to the movie theaters nowadays with a family and everything is rough. And to get me and my wife to go and spend the money on a baby, like it's really hit the mainstream when my wife turned to me and goes, "Have you heard about what's going on with the Joker?" And I'm like, "How do you know about it?" She's like, "It's everywhere. We got to go see this movie." Yeah. Yeah. So, but it was fascinating to watch a character, and the same thing happened to Taxi Driver. That's why Taxi Driver is, because it was obviously Joker is Taxi Driver pretty much in many ways. But Taxi Driver rubs people the wrong way because you're going on a journey with Travis Bickle and you're feeling what it's like to be insane. Essentially, right? And not the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest insane, which was fun. This kind of insane. And I think that's why viscerally people are reacting so interestedly to Joker. It's just an interesting thing in today's world.
Well, looking forward to seeing it when I have a minute.
It is.
It's definitely my number one movie on my list to see. Yeah.
But those mirror neurons is something very, very, very powerful. You feel for what the character is going through.
Exactly right. It's the whole thing of empathy, right? It's like, and that's the thing. No matter if the character is good or evil or immoral or moral or a good person or bad person, the fact that he's the main character, and there's also actually techniques and tricks to make you connect to make you care, right? So it's important to make you care because you can care about a character, or you can not care about a character. If you don't care about a character, it doesn't matter what they do, your script is done. So you got to learn how to care about the character. And so I bet you, even though I haven't seen the movie yet, I bet you that the filmmakers take the time to make you care about Joaquin Phoenix's character before you see him do what he does, right? Which I'm assuming is negative. And you kind of root for him, right? Because you care.
And that's where I think the problem lies, was that you're rooting for a crazy man. You're rooting for a murderer. And it's like at least with Silence of the Lambs, I love Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter is such a charming, he eats people.
He's a cannibal.
He eats people. But we had Jodie Foster as but then later in the other movies like Hannibal and things like that, he became the main character.
Here's the thing though. He may eat people, right?
But they were bad
people. But he only eats the people that, maybe not, that deserve it, right? The way the film ends, we feel this poetic justice of him eating Dr. Chilton at the end. And it's the same with shows like Dexter, for example, right? Like Dexter is a serial killer, but he kills the wrong people. He kills the people who deserve it. And so that makes us feel good. So and that, like vigilante.
And that's the thing, that you're exactly right. Like anytime the quickest way for you to hate somebody on a screen, it's one of those old tricks, like have the villain kick the dog.
Or even kill the dog,
You kill the dog, eat the dog, whatever you want to do.
I've heard Stephen King once say that of all the hate letters he got was when he actually killed a dog in one of his novels. Like he could kill people in the most amazing ways, but if he kills a dog, he's going to get the hate crowd.
Right, and that's like the easiest way. It's the easiest way for you to hate somebody right away, is have them hurt an animal, hurt a kid.
And that's not really and it's not the only thing. There's a whole bunch of stuff. When I read scripts with clients, and I say, and I'm very aware of what connects us and what disconnects us. So there's going to be times in the script where I go, okay, what he did or said there is a disconnector. It disconnects us. So do you want to keep it there? Is there a reason why you want it, or is it accidental? Because a lot of the times the writers don't know what they're doing, right? They're just writing the script. And if they don't realize that they just disconnected the audience from the character, and they don't know why. They don't know why the scene's not working. They don't know why the script's not working. And I could tell them, well, you just disconnected us here. It was intentional, but we don't care about the character. So everything that happens after that, if we don't care about the character, you're done.
So what are some of those elements and techniques that help you create a character that you have strong emotional ties to? Because that is also agreed. I mean, I was watching a show the other day and it was just like, ugh. Like I just like the plot was plot was good, but I'm like, if I get up and go to the bathroom and I tell my wife, just keep playing it, it's fine. You don't have to pause it. I'm disconnected.
Right.
But then you watch other shows or you watch other movies and you're just like...
Or think about the classics, right? Think about the classic sitcoms, right? Like Friends or, The
Seinfeld,
Office, right?
Yeah, Office.
Or
right.
Seinfeld, right? They're classics, or Cheers. I mean, because you care about the characters, right? It's like you don't care, even if the jokes are not funny or, I mean, they are, but even if they weren't, you would still want to be with those characters. You just want to be in the same room with them. And that's why you keep tuning in week after week after week,
So what are some of those elements to create that emotional tie?
So there's a whole bunch of them, right? I have a whole chapters in my book, but in terms of connecting emotionally, right? So there's these three things that I talk about, and you can see that very well with Pixar as well. So when I teach my classes on that, I show the Pixar clips and show you how it's done, and then show you the people that don't do it, right? So there's element of what I call pity, humanity, and admiration. Right. So there's if you can create pity in the character, meaning we care about something that happens to them. Right. So something happens, and it could be any character. You meet any character, you don't know anything about them. And if something happens to them that makes you feel sorry for them, like let's say they're bullied by someone, or they just got robbed, or they lost their wife, or they just lost their dog, or whatever it is, anything that makes us empathize and we feel sorry. And there's hundreds of those. Right. So empathy and pity is one of them, right? Because of the way we're built as humans, we cannot not care if you feel pity for someone. And it could be a villain as well. That's what they do with Hannibal Lecter, right? The fact that Dr. Chilton abuses
Anthony
Hopkins,
Hopkins.
We feel sorry for him, even though he's a cannibal, right?
Right.
So pity is one of them. Humanity is very important, and that basically is show the character's humanity, in a sense, make them care about something other than themselves. So a character who's not selfish, so a character who cares about something, whether they care for a dog, they care for a pet, they care for a plant. They do this in the Leon the Professional.
You read my mind. It was
exactly, right?
Yeah.
Because that's very well done.
It was so beautiful.
He's a killer, right? He's a hitman, but we care for him because when he go home, he drinks milk and he takes care for his plant. We know, he's a good guy.
He just happens to kill bad guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's one of them. So show humanity, show that you care about something, a cause. You have a friend you care for your parent who's sick. I mean, all this stuff, right? You tuck somebody in bed, you bring him soup. There's thousands of those. So humanity is a second one. And then the third one is the one that most people know about, is admiration, meaning that you give the character traits that we all admire in a human being. So think about, like, in your dating days, you had a list of the admirable traits you wanted in your mate, because that's what most people admire. So somebody who's beautiful or handsome, somebody who's smart, somebody who's funny, somebody who's the best at what they do, right? So the best cop, the best agent, the best soldier, the best whatever, right? Best surgeon. And there's a whole bunch of stuff. Somebody who's courageous, as opposed to
Indiana Jones, brave.
So
yeah.
The list of positive traits that are admirable in a person. So when you combine those three, and it's funny because talking about Pixar again, I showed the clip in Wall-E where when we meet in the beginning, we meet Wall-E and he's doing the garbage thing. But there's the scene where he finally goes to his house, to his little home, and it's only a 3-minute scene. But in those 3 minutes, you get about 20 plus little tips of all this stuff that I talked about, right? And those 20 things are kind of like designed to make us care about that character. And he's a robot. He's a garbage cleaner, right? But yet you feel sorry for him. You see his humanity. You see that he cares about things. They're showing us how human he is, right? And there's a lot of admirable traits in there about all the little things of how he keeps his house and he collects things and he likes romantic movies and he sings to himself. I mean, there's all these little things that just add up. Those are called the little touches, character touches. And that's what you want in all your characters.
Yeah, I was thinking about that movie. Like, there's no dialogue. There's barely any dialogue in that movie.
Yeah, it's one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. That with Up and Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Toy Story, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, Toy Story 4. All four of them. It's amazing, right?
All four of them are actually really good.
Yeah.
They always hit it out of the park with the Toy Stories, without question. Now, there's another thing that I think a lot of screenwriters have a problem with is the dreaded dialogue and being able to write realistic and sharp dialogue. And so any help you can give us to help dialogue in the world would be but also to talk on the nose dialogue, which when I wrote my first few screenplays, it was horrible. I would get that note back constantly, be like, dialogue's on the nose, and I'm like, what does this on the nose mean? Like, I don't understand I was so ignorant to the process. I didn't even know what So please explain on the nose dialogue, and then how to avoid on the nose dialogue.
Right. Well, I'll tackle your first question because I had a funny remark for that when you said how do we become good dialogue writers. I was going to say, well, there's a very simple process, but it might require a little bit of surgery, which is go and take Aaron Sorkin's brain and put it inside your skull, and then you'll be a good dialogue writer.
Or Tarantino. Yeah, exactly.
Or Tarantino, exactly. Right. So, but all joking aside, the craft of dialogue is probably the most important thing. Other than theme and scenes and craft of it, whatever, right? So I like this analogy that Ernest Hemingway shared with writers, where he said that a great story is architecture, not interior design, right? So architecture of a story is the structure, the theme, the plot, the characters. It's the foundation of a good story, right? So it's a solid story. Dialogue is interior design. Right. So it's all the little color of your walls and your posters, and I'm looking at your room, right? There's a very specific interior design going on, right? That would dialogue be. So you could have a solid house that is standing on its own, but if the room has no good interior design, it's still going to look kind of yucky, right? You're not going to have a good feeling about it, right? If your room was empty. So that's what dialogue is. So you could have a really good script, but with terrible dialogue, it's still not going to create that emotional impact you want in the reader, right? Okay. And by the way, it doesn't mean you're not going to sell your script. It just means they're going to hire a rewriter to do the script. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, but in Hollywood, dialogue writers are hired at six figures for a couple of weeks' work just to punch up the dialogue, because that's how important it is, right?
So can I stop you for a second? Because I want to make this really clear for people, because this is a wonderful analogy. If you have the most beautiful home designed, mansion, but the interior design is tacky and bad, the value of the entire house goes down.
Yes.
And it's that simple. And I think that's a great analogy for screenwriting. I've never heard that before. I think it's so important, because the house is the foundation with the theme, the structure, the characters. But that dialogue is the painting. What color is it painted? Is it neon? Is it neon green paint?
And I mention that every single time with clients and students, because when I give feedback and something is not working at the foundation level, right? I say, okay, thematically or character or story, something is not working. And they come back to me and say, oh, but what about that little scene where this character says this and that?
That's a nice painting. That
big line? And I'm going, yes, it is, but I don't care. I just don't care. You're talking about your house is crumbling, and you're talking about what poster to put in your wall. I mean, come on, right?
That's exactly it.
So that's a great analogy. I love that analogy. Thank you, Ernest Hemingway. But that's the thing. And so writers sometimes do not understand that the foundation has to be solid before they think about the interior design. So, but dialogue is the interior design, and on the nose dialogue, to come back to your question, is probably one of the biggest challenges with writers, because there's different levels of dialogue, right? So there's dialogue, and I break it down into these four categories in my book, which is emotional impact, which is the lines that make you smile, that make you laugh, witty lines, sarcasm, all this stuff. They create an instant reaction, right? So they like, ooh, that was a great line, right? That's emotional impact. Then you have character, which is character voice, which is what the character says, and the way they say it reveals their personality, reveals their opinions, their traits, et cetera, et cetera. So those are character. That's what we call individuality for dialogue. The third one is exposition. And unfortunately, most writers tend to focus on exposition. And that's where you get the on-the-nose claim, right? Feedback. Because exposition is characters saying information that you feel the audience needs to know to figure out what's going on in the scene or in the story. Unfortunately, that's all they do, right? So another feedback you get with dialogue is that all the dialogue sounds the same. All the characters sound the same because it's really just your voice. And all you care about is giving expositions. You don't care about character. You don't care about emotional impact. The opposite of on the nose is subtext. And that's the fourth category. And that's probably the hardest thing to master. It's usually where you get to the professional level and you're a master of dialogue. That's when you get subtext. And that's when the line of dialogue kind of implies things. You don't state it on the nose. On the nose means you're stating exactly what the character is thinking and what he's feeling, right? So I'll give you an example, top of my head. If you're a friend of yours, who you don't really like, comes to visit you, right? And you say, oh, it's you, right? In that, right? We understand that's subtext for I don't like you, right?
But if he says, "Oh, it's you," it's all about performance.
So that would be right. So that would be like the subtext, right? Or so you know what he's thinking, you know what he's feeling, without saying it. Now, a beginner writer who's going to write on the nose dialogue would be, "Oh, I'm really unhappy to see you right now," right? You're stating exactly what he's feeling. That's on the nose dialogue. Right?
So you mean
I'm not happy right now, or I'm so happy to see you. That's on the nose.
So you mean basically The Room? Basically, Tommy Wiseau's The Room is basically the entire movie is on the nose on the nose dialogue, which makes it so beautiful and wonderful of that movie. I absolutely it's one of my.
It's so bad that it's good.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time, purely because it's so bad. And when you said that, I'm like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. That's like, oh, hi, Tommy. I just walked in the door. Thank you. How was your day? It is pure on the nose dialogue. Also, another thing, and if I may dissect The Room here for a second, when you're writing a scene, and I think writers should understand this, is that you really need to pick the most important and interesting part of the scene. Right. So, what a perfect scene is just a wonderful scene in The Room is this scene that they go into a cafe, and the scene starts with two people we have never seen before in our life ordering. I'm going to have a coffee. I'm going to have this. Great. Mm-hmm. Two other people go right behind them in line, order. We don't know who these people are. Right. The third people are our characters, and they order. So you sat there for a minute and a half watching someone else order for no reason, and that's the most interesting part. We should have picked it up at our characters ordering.
That happens a lot. Yeah, in scenes, it's like, what do you cut? Because a lot about our brain just wants to set up the scene, right? So the examples I usually give is like, if you're going to show an interview scene, right? Somebody at a job interview, you're not going to show the guy driving there, or even before, like getting ready for his interview, driving, finding parking, getting up on the elevator, checking in with the receptionist, waiting, reading a magazine until he's called to the interview. You're going to cut right at the interview, right? So that's what it's about.
Yeah, it's in that scene specifically, you might even have to have them ordering the coffee. They should just be sitting down at the coffee shop with the unless the ordering really is moving the story along. And that's fat that could be trimmed.
So actually, one of the first questions you should ask yourself with scene writing is what's the point of that scene? What's the purpose of that scene, right?
Do you have any tips on how to create good subtext in dialogue?
I do, because I show a whole bunch of techniques as well in the book on subtext. There's a whole bunch of them. I mean, the ones that come to mind is implying things, right? Or even not even saying a line. Like, think about how if the character can actually do something that implies something, as opposed to. So it's all about implying things, right? Subtext means the meaning behind the text, right? So going back to our examples with your friend, if you say, "Oh, it's you," right? "Oh, it's you" doesn't say anything, but we know in the context, if we know the way you say it, or we know before that you hate the guy, right? We know that "oh, it's you" means I hate you and I'm not happy to see you, right? So that would be an example of subtext. So implying the line.
All right. So something like
physicalizing the line sometimes.
So like something like if a woman or a wife knows that her husband's cheating on him, and she hasn't told him yet. and he walks in and he's like, "Hi, honey," and she's washing the dishes.
Right.
And she's like, "Oh, I'm doing all right." And the way she's washing the dishes says everything about what that scene's about.
Or physicalizing.
And then he's starting to pick up on it, and then it's like, but no one's saying, "You cheated on me." Why? But it's all done within. It's all done within the scene.
Right.
That's subtext, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of.
There's many ways, but subtext is an art form, though.
It is, and a craft as well. Yeah.
It is.
To like list a whole bunch of techniques and give you examples of it shows you that it is a technique. So you can definitely apply that.
So you script doctor a lot. You also consult a lot with screenwriters. What is the biggest thing you see? Like, what do you come in to fix the most? Like, what is the thing that you're like, the house you come in to analyze the structure of the house and the interior design, and what is the thing that you see like, man, if people should just get this right, it would be so much better.
It depends. There's so many different things. It depends on the student, and I also teach at UCLA, so it's kind of like it depends on where the student's level. So, like I said, sometimes a student can or a client can write great characters and great dialogue, but the scenes are not working or the story's not working. A lot of the times it's theme. That's the reason why I feel, one of the things that I've come to realize is how important stories are for us humans and why that is, and that's really theme. So if you really know how to write to theme, right, because everything connects to it, like the characters and the character arc connects to theme. The dialogue will connect to theme if you have a good thematic argument, and then of course the plot. So that's the thing, and theme is a foundational issue, right? Remember Rod Serling saying it's where it starts. So you have to know theme, you have to know what you're trying to say, right? And then figuring out your character who's going to convey that, and the plot, and the ending of it.
Now you had one of your
theme would be the answer.
Okay, so you also wrote a book called The 101 Habits of Highly Successful Screenwriters.
Yes.
Your very first book. Yeah. What are some top habits that screenwriters should do to be a good screenwriter? And I'm going to say the first one will probably be just right, but what's some other ones?
That's basically it.
That's just right. Right.
There's 101 habits in there, and all the big time writers talk about what they do in all those specific habits. So there's a lot to read. But yeah, pretty much it comes down to ass to the chair, right? Like putting your butt on the chair and dedicating the time. So a good tip is to schedule the time, when you have your calendar and you schedule your dentist appointment, you don't miss that, right? So you show up for that, right? So a good technique is to actually put in writing time in your calendar with a start date, a start time, and an end time, so that you get those notifications on the Mac that says, your meeting starts in 30 minutes, And so if you actually write down your writing sessions, at least you'll show up and hopefully dedicate yourself to writing. So that's a habit right there.
Well, how about for screenwriters who I've heard this 1,000 times? I only write when I'm inspired. It's when I get the inspiration, and these are the same guys who have the screenplay they've been working on for 7 years.
Right. Exactly.
The one screenplay, not the 20, the one screenplay. And every time you talk to them, they're like, "How's that screenplay going?" Almost there.
Yeah,
almost, just a little bit, almost there.
Yeah.
So
the answer, and this actually came from who said that to me? I forget now, but one of the writers in the 101 Habits book, who said, does a plumber have plumber's block? I mean, he has to go and he has to fix what he needs to fix. He shows up on time. That's his job. Right? He doesn't have, you don't go to your office job and say, I don't feel like it today, right? You go, you do it because there's a lot at stake. That's the problem with writers. They don't have a lot at stake, right? I mean, because nobody's forcing you to write, right? There's no deadline. Somebody's not putting a gun on your head. So that's another tip for you guys, is to make sure you give yourself stakes, like give yourself deadlines, gauge yourself. Like one great trick is, to tell people that you're going to write, right? That you're going to finish your script by, let's say, 3 months from now, right? So in February 1st, right? And you tell people I'm going to finish my script February 1st. And if I don't finish my script by February 1st, I'm going to have to donate $1,000, right, to the NRA or to the Trump campaign or to
Nazi lovers, whatever.
But basically anything that you totally abhor, hate, and you're going to force yourself. And believe me, if somebody's going to hold down to it, so actually you're going to have to give the $1,000 to your friend so that they're going to send it, and they will send it if you don't give them the script by February 1st. And I guarantee you will finish your script by February 1st.
There's actually websites dedicated to this. There's one called There's one called, I think, stick.com, which is like the carrot or the stick.
Right.
And you do a public, you put up your thing, and it does exactly that. They'll deposit. If you don't supply it, they will deposit it directly into the opposite.
There you go. And believe me, and that's suddenly now you have stakes. Now you have motivation.
You will work.
I really need to finish that, right?
You will write. You will write.
Now it may not be good, but at least you'll finish it. And that's step number one. You have to finish it, and then you can go back to it and fix what's not working.
Can we talk about the rewriting process a little bit, because that is such a
That's a pain in the butt.
Oh my God. But I also, I found myself when I'm writing a lot of times, and this is the old versions of me, is I would rewrite as I write, because it was an excuse to not continue. So you have the greatest first chapter or the greatest first 20 pages ever. Yeah. But it's useless because you haven't finished it.
I'll meet you halfway on that one. There's actually could be a good trick, and it's actually Eric Roth, who's the big time screenwriter of Forrest Gump. So Eric Roth's technique, which I think is pretty effective, is that every day he rewrites from page 1, but every day he adds to it. So let's say the first day he does the first scene, right? It's 3 pages or 10 pages. The next day he's going to rewrite page 10 and continue to page 15. The next day he's going to go page 1 to page 20. The next day he's going to go but he's always starting from scratch, so that by the time the script is done, he's rewritten it like 30 or 40 times, right? So I think that's a really good technique. It takes a little longer, but that's his technique, and you can't doubt that one.
But that's like samurai level writing. Like you're talking about a master. You're talking about to be a first time writer doing that.
Who says you cannot be a master right off the gate? We're talking,
Carl, stop it.
Alex, we're talking about techniques here. We're not talking about talent, okay? Talent, you're right. Talent is that thing that you either have it or not, or you keep getting feedback, or you have a good idea, a good story. That's fine. But we're talking about writing habits here. Anybody can do these habits, right?
You can.
The deadline. Anybody can do the rewriting trick. There's another one that Seinfeld is known for, the break the chain. Have you heard of that one?
No, I haven't. What's that one?
So this was to be Jerry Seinfeld's technique for making sure that he wrote jokes every single day. And so what he did is that he had his calendar, and every time he wrote, he would put a big X, right? And then the next day, an X, an X, and another X. And his job, when he looked at his calendar, was to not break the chain. He had to make sure he had an X every time, because if he didn't do it one day, he would break the chain. You would see this hole of the chain of X's. So that's a really great trick. You look at that chain, you go, oh my God, look at all those things in a row. I've been so productive. I don't want to break the chain. So you just keep doing it, That's they're very, very powerful.
And the longer that chain is, the less likely you are gonna break. You're like, I have my chain's going for 5. My chain's been going for 5 years, and it's just it just keeps going and going. That's very powerful. The Eric Roth one I love, and I think it's a wonderful way of
doing it. You could do that. That's so simple. Because we're not talking about some people rewriting the same chapter 1 or first scene, right? And never writing anything new.
But that's
have to write something new.
But that's the thing. That's the discipline. That's the discipline that I'm pointing out, is you have to have the discipline to keep going and make sure that's why I was like, I think it's a little bit more samurai in the sense of just the discipline aspect of it. But in theory, I think it's a fantastic technique. It's a fantastic habit.
Yeah, I'm an optimist. Everybody can be a samurai if they apply and practice.
I agree. Maybe I'm a little too cynical. Maybe I got too much shrapnel. I got too much shrapnel in me, my friend.
Burbank. That's
that's right. I'm in the midst of this. You're away from Hollywood right now. I'm in it. I'm very cynical. I just seen too much.
I'm breathing some fresh air. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
You are.
Exactly. The stench of broken dreams are out here, sir, and I can't.
Yes.
No, but we're here to help. And that's why I do the show. I want filmmakers understand the realities of what the business is, but yet to continue to follow that dream. Because if we don't, what is the reason why we're here? I mean, if not, we could all be accountants somewhere making money, or we could all be a lawyer somewhere doing stuff. We're here. We're crazy. We have to understand we're all nuts just for even being here. And this is a crazy business.
Absolutely.
And to try to make money in this business is even more insane. We're carnies. We're carnival folk, essentially. So, all right. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask all of my guests, sir.
Sure.
What are the 3 screenplays every screenwriter should read?
Ooh, that's a great question. It really depends on
genre.
Why? Yeah. Well, not just genre, but why would you read? Like, if you like, for example, for me, like, if you had a problem with dialogue, I would tell you which dialogue scripts to read. Like I would say, go read the Tarantino script, or Aaron Sorkin or David Mamet, right? Or if it was for description specifically, like I would say, read a Tony Gilroy or read a Shane Black script,
Shane Black,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, so very, very specific. You have craft elements that some scripts are better than others, but overall. For overall great storytelling, I would say read any Pixar script if you can get your hands on it. But I would go for my favorite filmmakers, like Billy Wilder. So to read Some Like It Hot, read The Apartment, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Blade Runner, Inception. I mean, it's all I can just name all my favorite movies and say go read that script.
Now, what advice would you give a screenwriter trying to break into the business today?
Write a great script. I know you probably heard this a million times, but I'm telling you, I mean, so many people are so worried about the marketing and the networking,
pitching,
and the pitching and all this thing. And they don't realize all they need is just one great script. I'm not saying only write one script. I'm saying just write a great script, because you can literally drop it anywhere or anybody you meet by accident, even if it's the accountant or, I'll tell you a funny story. One of my clients recently, they're writing a script and they're writing it for a specific actor in mind. And they've been working on it for a very long time. And out of the blue, he's a tennis player. And he tells me that out of the blue that one of his tennis partners that he plays on a regular basis is the head of accounting for Netflix. And I'm going, okay, dude, because all this time he's been waiting to send it to the actor's production company, right? And I say, dude, just make sure make sure it's a great script, right? And then give it to the accounting guy at Netflix. Because I guarantee you that if he loves that script, he's going to give it to the right people at Netflix, who then will show it to that actor. And the actor will say yes to Netflix and not to these 2 unknown writers, right? So that was my advice to them. But that's the thing. So write a great script and you can show it to the, in my 101 Habits book, I heard so many stories of how these writers broke in. And a lot of them were, I wrote this great script and I gave it to the secretary of the friend of a friend of a friend of whatever. And you hear so much of these stories of just somebody, I mean, think about it. If you saw a great movie, right? Wouldn't you die to tell your friends about it? Right? And it's exactly that. Somebody reads a great script, no matter who it is, they're gonna. Chances are, especially if you're in LA, chances are they know somebody in the industry. Says, hey, I read this great script. You want to read it? Of course. It's all about word of mouth. And it was It was how Tarantino got in, because Tarantino was trying to knock on doors for years. I mean, 10 years. And finally someone read, like, I think it was Natural Born Killers, I think it was, or True Romance. And it handed it to somebody. Right. Exactly.
And he got it.
Right. So, I mean, Michael Arndt ended up being hired by Pixar strictly on the strength of Little Miss Sunshine, who, when they read the script and hired him, was before the movie came out. So strictly on the strength of the script, he got hired. So that's why I keep saying, write a great script. Take the time to learn the craft. Take the time to write and rewrite as many times as it takes to write a great script. And when you finally have a great script, then you can go ahead and try to network and try to tell people about it, or enter it in a reputable contest like Austin or The Nickel, and just have a great product. Because right now people are just jumping the gun. They're just trying to make connections and friendships and relationships within the business, right? Which is important. But the first thing they care about is, if you tell them you're a screenwriter, the first thing I'm going to say is, okay, tell me about the script you wrote. Tell me about your best script. Because that's all they want to know. They want to read a great script. Everybody's looking for a great script in this town. Nobody has a job in this town without a great script, right? No, actors have nothing to say. Directors have nothing to direct. Agents. I mean, think about all the crew, production. I mean, there's like thousands. The entire town runs on a script. You got to have a script, and that's why it's such. I mean, to me, it's the best profession, right? Because it starts with you, the writer, right? You write a great script, and everything will go from there. But if you don't have that great script, if you're like, you're trying to market without, or you're trying to sell a script that's not ready, you're just wasting your time. Because let's say you have a great idea for a script, right? And you tell an executives that you just ran into somebody at a lunch place, right? And you say, hey, I wrote the script, and it's about, let's say they pitch him like Blade Runner or something, right? And let's say Blade Runner was never made. It's kind of like that movie Yesterday with the Beatles guy.
So
right?
good. I love that
right?
movie.
Exactly.
Love that movie.
Right? So imagine you were a screenwriter in an age where nobody knew all the great movies that were ever made. Chinatown, The Godfather, right? All this stuff, right? And they say you're the writer. You'll be the hottest writer in the world, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's probably an idea for a movie, right?
Right.
Okay, never mind. So imagine you're that. Let's say you pitch a great idea, right? And the executives, oh, wow, that's a great idea. Can I read the script? Yeah. Okay, you send them the script. The script is not good, not ready. The idea is good. The script is not ready. Their reader is going to read it. They're going to do coverage on it, pass. That's it. You're done. And chances are you run into this other that same executives again with a second script or even a better version of your script. And believe me, you got a bad taste in his mind, right? About that. So they're not going to be that enthusiastic to read your script again or to read another script of yours. So don't break, you only have one chance to impress. And so make sure you have a solid script. Make sure you learn the craft. Take the time, take the classes, read the books, whatever it is. There's so much free information out there right now, especially on your site, right?
Right.
Kudos to you for that. And there's other big time websites that have a lot of free information, like Go Into the Story with my ex ELA, right?
Yeah. It's got mine.
Exactly. And so, and then get coverage if you want to see how your script is doing, if it's ready, right? There's a lot of reading services like yours, but for less than $100, you can get a reader to say if your script is good or not, and then you don't lose that important first impression from a real executive, right? So get that out of the way, or send it to a contest to see, except the contests take longer to get feedback back.
Yeah.
Readers, I think the reading service is a good way to start. And then if, the reader will just tell you what's not working. They say, okay, it's not working. And they may tell you why, but a lot of them, they don't tell you. And that's when you go to a consultant, because the consultant will be able to kind of like go deeper and analyze why something is not working and tell you how to fix it, right? So I consult as well. And it really depends on the consultant's knowledge of the craft, right? So the more they know about the craft, the more they know what works in a script and doesn't, they'll be able to help you. So that's what I would suggest. But take the time to write a great script. That's probably the biggest mistake I see writers make, that they just market too soon, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the...
All right.
Yeah.
And where can people find out about you and your work?
Just go to my website, karliglesias.com. My books are The 101 Habit of Highly Successful Screenwriters, and the big one, The Writing for Emotional Impact, which is all the techniques that I talk about to create that emotional engagement in the audience. So I feel that is probably the key to the craft. That's also available on Amazon and on my website and everywhere books are sold. Mm-hmm. But you can get all the information from my website, so karliglesias.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have some of your courses on Indie Film Hustle TV as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So we'll be able, and they're great. And before I ever had the pleasure of meeting you, sir, I was taking that DVD course and reading that book. So thank you so much, Karl, for all the work you've been doing to help the screenwriters out here, man.
Pleasure. I always love to talk about the craft, and it's a pleasure.